Oh, mm, uh, um,
Yeah.
if I, so brain goes in a number of directions. So what's on my heart and mind continues to be, which comes back to coming home to love, is how to both regulate people's nervous systems and regulate and rewire them to resiliency, um, so that they actually have the bandwidth to develop skill sets in communication and analytical thinking. So what I'm noticing, because this is up for me, you know, that I'm out in the social media world trying to get people to be like, wake the fuck up and be capable of looking at things in a complex and nuanced way. But if they're kidnapped by their sympathetic nervous system, they can't. It's like heroes and villains. And they're not able to look at more nuance. They're not able to understand history and cycles of events. They're so, you know,
Mm.
I'm in it a lot trying to think about what are different ways that I can bring up these topics that might encourage more meta consciousness too.
Mm.
So that's it. That's in my heart and mind a lot. Um, with what influence I do have to make sure that I'm using it to make a difference as much as I can, and then to not get kidnapped into either despair or, um, a numbness or over emotionality, and try to come back to compassion. Like I can have compassion for Trump or Netanyahu or Putin or even the
Mhm.
Ayatollah while understanding that they need to be stopped. So not using hate or all those things to generate my actions. And it's at the big level for me at culture or country, but then it's also at the personal level, like how to not use that defensiveness, criticism, etc., on the personal level when I feel like something isn't right for me. Coming to the personal, my Islamic boyfriends have like
Mm.
started to ping back into my life. And um, when English is our mother tongue, having relationships is challenging enough, let alone when English is not the mother tongue. And trying to explain concepts like collaboration, um, ability to observe ourselves, um, wanting to base a relationship on friendship and courageous revealing, not just sexual attraction. Ventrovagal breath, ventrovagal breath. It's challenging enough when, like, once again, we're in the same country, we have roughly the same, you know, background, let alone when some concepts aren't even taught necessarily in other language, other countries. And it's, I'm very blessed and intuitive about the men I date. So I've, knock on wood, I've never dated a man who, in his own ethos, thinks that it's something to do to rape a woman. Like, I've never dated that man, but I'm very intuitive about who I get close to intimately. But I would say many of the men that I've spent time with have still will have sort of an entitlement towards sex and a kind of a pushiness towards sex. They're not
Mm.
going to go to rape, but they will be like, you know, oh, but you're so beautiful. Oh, but I'm really, I'm turned on now. Oh, it's like, and so you're turned on entitles you to something from me. Where's the me in that? And that's so common. Where's the me in your turn on other than a projection of what you want from me?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And like
Right.
that one is, oh, I do a lot of work to go into like deeper compassion, into the brainwashing that men have been getting. And it's like, have compassion, Francesca, have compassion. Bring more compassion and, more patience. And sometimes it's just painful. It's just painful because then if I'm really taking care of all of the me's, I'm choosing to be single and celibate. And I really don't want to be single and celibate. I mean, like my primal, my romantic, my many, many parts of me don't want to be single and celibate. But my metaconsciousness, my wisdom is like, if you go for this, it's like eating McDonald's and feeling sick later. It's like you're getting
Right.
something, but it's not actually going to nourish you.
Yeah.
So, and it might actually make you feel sick. So, honeys, I know that you're lonely and horny, but I'm going to invite you to stay patient. Ah,
Yeah.
so
Quality over shitty everything else.
yeah, yeah. So that's good news. I'm developing like great, really friendly relationships with men, like really awesome. I've just have wonderful male friends on a level that I even haven't had in a long time since like high school. So like on one hand, it's like it's luscious, but and on the other hand, you know, that other piece. So that's the good news. And then my son was DJing last night at Fusion, and I
Oh
just
yeah.
I have such joy when I go and see him, you know, happy and um, in community. And I asked him, I said, Dylan, you don't have entitlement towards women. Do you know why? And he said, Mom, I didn't grow up with men.
Hmm.
Mm,
Men enculturate other men. They're like, look at those tits, look at that ass. Like men, fathers will enculturate sons into
mm,
objectification of women. And he
mm.
said, I didn't grow up with that. I said, wow, you
Yeah.
people.
I mean, I grew up with my dad, but he wasn't doing that either.
That good dad. Congrats. Yay.
It it just wasn't his thing. He's like, being a man didn't come with a lot of it didn't seem to come with a lot of like qualifiers, and he had friends that, and he was generally pretty gregarious. Like we were stuck in traffic. I was 4, and he just stepped out of the car, started chit chatting with the guy, and with the car in front, the car in the back, trying to figure out what the fuck was going on. And
Love it.
and he never had, like, there was never anything about him that was about like proving that he's a man, or that, or prove, or being part of something that was toxic. So that never showed up for me, and certainly not with the people he was hanging out with. So he must have been mostly connecting with other people that he felt in alignment with. And that wasn't also not really part of my family on either side, which is kind of surprising now that I think of it. Like that seems to be so prevalent out there, and not really within either one of my families. On my mom's side, it was just my grandma who raised 7 kids. So,
Oh,
I'm sure that gave her kids like a sense of badassness for women. And on my dad's side, it was a very balanced relationship that wasn't about proving anything. So, yeah, I was lucky. Very, very, very lucky.
yeah, Seth. I mean, yay, yay. I'm glad that that's true. And it's sad that
Yeah,
it means you're lucky.
totally. Right. And it's also sad. Well, it's not, it's sad that I find myself in society, especially in America, more so in America than in Canada, where I've been told how to be a man more often here than I have when I was growing up and all my time in Canada.
Say that a different way. What does that mean?
So when I moved to the US, I started receiving messaging of what it's like to be a man. I never really felt that when I was in Canada.
In a good way or a bad way?
Oh, I think it's good.
Right.
Like
So
I
the
wasn't,
feedback in the States was more direct and more supportive to you, be like, oh, that's how you do it.
well, no, that's the thing. It was more restrictive.
So not in a good way. So the feedback you're getting on
So,
like this is how you be
oh,
a
yeah,
man was
yeah.
more rigid and restrictive.
That's right. That's
Got
right.
it.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah,
Sorry, I didn't understand your
yeah,
question at
yeah.
first. So yeah, I moved to the US, and then people started telling me that that this is what it's like to be a man. So either fight back or get along, get with the program. So feminists were like, this is how you fight back, and non-feminists were like, get with the program. This is what it's like to be a man, and you should too. And I'd be like, wow, I don't feel like I fit either way. I mean, I was more in the, I was more certainly progressive in some ways, but not in a political way.
Mm.
So, and I don't know, I'm curious about your experience in Canada because I didn't have that. It doesn't feel as strong in Canada as it does in the US.
Yeah, I mean, like I grew up without a father around or even a father
Hmm.
figure. And so,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was a real sort of blank spot in my life. And
Hmm.
at school, there was definitely like parameters of like, this is where you need to function if you're going to be a man in the world. But it was a lot of
Interesting.
like, don't be gay or, like,
Mm,
don't cry, don't be feminine. Just
mm,
kind of getting your hand slapped for kind of operating in arenas that were not deemed acceptable for
mm.
boys and men. That's what I
Interesting.
felt, I think, most strongly, because that was where I was like, oh, I'm getting punished for kind of being myself here. Um,
Right.
and I
Huh.
think, I think that stuff is available, but when you don't have a blueprint for healthy relationships with men, it's not easy
Right.
for you to find those men. And so, like I think if I was more involved in sport, like I stepped away from sport in high school, which is I loved sport in elementary school, but I think it was confronting to me in a way that I needed a male role model to like kind of push me back into, and I didn't have that. And so I just said no thanks. And that left
Hmm.
me kind of floundering in that space that I think healthy role
Interesting.
models from men in a sport environment would have been like, water in the desert for me. So, it was all
Yeah.
once I got out of school that I really started to go, oh, I got some work to do here.
Interesting. I wasn't into sports either. I mean, started getting into swimming because I was pretty good at it, or at least I could hold my breath for 3 minutes underwater, which I guess qualified as being into swimming. And then I did a competition and I got in fifth place, and I was like, sucks. I don't want to compete. Like this,
Mm,
this felt like a shit ton of work for not a whole. Like, why only the first three? Like that makes no sense to me. So I kind of dropped out of that, and then I really got into like science and like science fair, which I wasn't doing for winning, just because it was interesting. And
mm,
so, yeah, I never looked for role models on how to be a man belonging with men,
mhm,
as a result.
mhm.
And I didn't need to. Like, I could do things with one or two or three friends, and we were just into doing stuff with each other. So it was always like a very small group. So I didn't have to belong. It was just us doing stuff together.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, the topic of everyone, but in particular the men that I work with, their
Hmm.
relationship with men in their adult life is always like such a huge topic and a place to do
Interesting.
work.
Right.
Like men that are struggling tend to not have solid relationships with men around them.
Yeah, that's weird because that.
Almost
Yeah.
always. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't have that many relationships with men,
Mm.
and I seem to be doing okay. Francesca? A little, yeah, perky ear.
Little bunny ears.
Bunny
Um,
ears.
uh, I don't know if it's going to be possible for this one, but maybe this is something to think about in another one or to think about in the secure network is, that sense of a secure relationship with um, what it means for you to be a man, or what it means for you to be a woman, or what it means for you to be non-binary, so that, and what is, and even unpacking, like what's the bad news? I call it the map of the wounds of culture. Like what's the bad news, the negative or conflicting messages you heard about being a man or about being a woman or about being non-binary? What is the bad news in culture that we don't always just face and look at? Okay, here's the list.
Mhm.
So now imagine we're creating something new. We're creating a new vision that we want to work towards. What is our vision of a secure embodiment of of maleness? What is our vision of a secure embodiment of femaleness and non-binary, if we have non-binary in the room? And so, to actually maybe do an exercise of like, what is that, and kind of gather. I feel like it's something important about security, because there's secure childhood attachment,
Mhm.
but in adolescent in particular, there's like, how do we attach to our identity and our expression
Yeah,
as
individuation.
as a male or
Yeah.
female? And that's when the culture, our peer group, our society becomes so important
Mhm.
Mm.
and can really brainwash us in many ways.
Mm.
So, and I think we're all struggling against it, but wouldn't it be nice to struggle together?
Mhm. Yeah.
Rather
Well,
than
then,
just
but
do
as
it
soon as
alone.
you have it together, then there's also an in group and an out group. So that's the tricky part. I feel like I was isolated from a lot of it because I just had my very tiny peer group, and we were not really trying to behave along with anything else that was bigger.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'll say is it depends on the definition of group, core values of group.
Mm,
So when I
mm,
was in middle school and high school, some people seem to define their groups as an in group and an out group. We're going to have like a
Mhm.
private language. We're going to have a
mm,
private, handshake. We're going to have the ways that we talk so that when somebody else comes by, we're, kind of snickering, and like
mm,
they
mm,
don't understand what we're referring to because we're in and they're out. And for me personally, I always created groups that had a core value, still do, a core value of inclusivity.
mm,
So even if we're talking about something that was the party last week and someone comes by, they weren't there, so we're referring to things that they don't know. This is a really key moment that I see everywhere because I'm in a lot of
mm,
groups. Is some groups, this person comes over, there's a conversation that they're not aware of, and the group closes in. We were
mm,
there last week and you weren't, and we're not going to
mm,
catch you up. We're not going to tell you the whole story.
mhm,
Where a group that values inclusivity will pause the conversation to say,
mm,
this is what we're talking about. This is
mm.
what happened last week. This is, so that the person gets to enter in.
Yeah, it's like there's a welcoming, there's like a hosting versus visiting, but eventually you're like one of us, or you're also hosting kind of thing.
The, there's also, for me, there's also the importance of the honoring and celebration of the differences and the differentiation so
Mm,
that a group can come together that is for something different, for something specific that isn't holistically inclusive of everyone, but not because it's against them, simply because this group is doing something for this group. Like the obvious example is like men's and women's circles. It's like the women's circle doesn't have to in any way be against men, but they don't have to include men. In fact, I don't think they should include men. That circle, that group is for something that doesn't include men. Ultimately, it does. It could be couched within a larger context of community of togetherness. But within the community, there are differentiated parts that are meant to operate on their own, at least in part. And so I think we've swung so far that anything that looks like differentiation is seen as bad and wrong. And I think that's just a huge mistake. So we don't have to get
mm.
any more into that. I think we can
So,
talk
I
about it
mean,
another time.
what I meant about in group and out group is whenever you have an in group, or you have a sense of group, period, there's also a sense that there's a sense of coherence to it, and then there's a sense of being required to maintain that coherence, and how that's defined really changes the nature of the group. Like either so, and I'm bringing it back to men. If men feel like they have to abide by a certain code in order to belong, then it's constraining. If they feel like whatever they're bringing in becomes part of the commonwealth of that group, then that's more inclusive. And so I think I've never, like, I'm just relating it to my own experience, where I don't feel like I've ever been in a group of men until I moved to the US that actually were saying, oh, well, we've been like this and you have to become like that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so it's not like it's good or bad. It's just like there. It seems like to be a more restrictive, less inclusive expression that was essentially trying to change me instead of taking me in and being like, great, bring that in because that's more.
Mm.
Yeah, I love that sense of bringing people in and allowing a sense of being changed,
Mhm.
like expanding, evolving versus saying we're this and you have to align
Mhm.
with this. I think that's a very powerful distinction. So also what's a healthy group, what's an unhealthy group? Because some groups they formulate as kind of going back to what you said, Dolphin, they formulate on being against or criticizing. So like
Mm.
when I've been in
Some
groups of
some do.
women that the women cohere around criticizing men,
Mm.
or the men cohere around
Mhm.
criticizing women. And that's very different from saying we're going to be women together, looking at some of the things that have been hurtful, even by men, but how can we help men understand us? How can we build trust with men? So it's a very different intentionality
Right.
around how we're looking at things.
I mean, that is inclusive versus exclusive. It's from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know where definitely it can come into the secure network at some point. I don't know if there's any
Mhm.
space for it at all in the
I mean,
we.
I think what we're creating is generally very inclusive. I
Yeah.
think
I mean,
some of it. Yeah.
I was going to say an overt discussion about it. I think
Ah,
we're inclusive. Yeah, for sure. I feel like we're inclusive and we're moving toward rather than against. It's like, what are we moving
no.
toward? But
Mhm.
I'm just curious if bringing more of this to awareness
Mm.
and even doing an exercise about it would be additive to the group, or is it something we
Mhm.
should just leave for now on the secure
Mm.
network
It can also be part of the conversation one morning. Like,
or
how do you
lunch?
feel? Or lunch, right? I mean, it could just be inquiries like, how do you feel like you can be even more of a part of using the unique you that you are, and instead of like molding yourself, because I think part of abusive relationships, especially when somebody's growing up, is the parent saying you need to be this way for me, and that's an abusive, domineering, bullying form of belonging. Like you have to contort yourself into something that your parent really likes, even just by the way that they love you or don't love you, depending on how you are and who you are. So I think that serves as the early model for belonging. And are your parents like welcoming every aspect of you as you are and as you develop, or are they telling you, nah, actually this doesn't belong, like leave this out? So I feel like the secure relating is actually is naturally an inclusive, an expression of inclusive, is characterized by inclusiveness,
And
because it's a
also
it's a
attunement.
right. Well, I mean, I look at attunement as how can you get somebody's world so close, so well that they feel seen, they feel seen accurately, on all levels, somatically and psychologically and emotionally and socially and so on, so that they feel like you're doing something together. And then you can care for them because you get them and they get that you get them. And then they also feel your consideration because you get them, you actually want to support what's important to them.
Yeah, but I think that could go to the level of group.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that's what we're creating.
Yeah, so yeah, just bringing up some of these concepts. I just added it to my list of, secure classes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Creating secure groups and communities.
Mm.
Um, and then I just want to add about being a man or being a woman, what we call it secure, maybe secure identities, secure.
Mm.
Um,
I mean, I feel that the LGBTQIA and so on, like for all their defining of identities, the idea that more and more identities get added is actually kind of an inclusive. It's in. I mean, it's inherently an inclusive group, but it's like the criticism is often, oh, you're just going to keep adding letters, and I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, like more
Well,
letters.
yeah, but I like for me the challenge is if someone has an ideology or frame for making sense of things and they are not ready or willing or able to say where does this framework fall short or where
Mhm.
does this framework go too far, it becomes problematic. And I see that in some of that ideology. Like I have no
Yeah.
issue with the whole process of intersectionality. Like let's get into how and where the parts that we bring to the table influence where we come from and how we relate to
Yeah.
each other. Like, of course. But if you
Mhm.
follow intersectionality to its conclusion, what you come to is the individual,
Of
which is
course.
beautiful. But if it's a dividing instrument, then
Mhm.
it's not ultimately helpful. If we can
Yeah,
make
but
sense of
they.
ourselves through the lens of the individual, great. But
Mhm.
if we can't get to a baseline of togetherness, then that project of individuality or individuating through the intersectionality, it's actually a divisive tool. Do you know what I mean? Like that's my
I mean,
criticism of it.
if you take it to the nth degree, but in practice, we're not going all the way there.
No,
I'm
but
confused.
I have felt like quite consistently mistreated and
Mhm.
excluded by people using that frame and ideology like a lot as
Oh,
a white
totally.
cis man. And
Yeah.
so again, like I understand the intelligence and goodness of it, but you can take a
Mhm.
good idea and use it as a weapon, and now it's not doing good in the world. So like again, I just think there's short-sightedness around that
Yeah.
lens that's often used.
I mean, it's
Um,
part of the learning of it.
Yes, yeah,
It's,
for sure.
I mean, yeah.
what
Rabbit.
I just think I just lost something for a moment here. So I just want to come back into the thread. I want to be included. Um,
Totally.
um, so LGBTQI plus. Um, so we're saying that sometimes when we're kind of separating out identities or expanding, I don't know, like what is that this creates exclusivity? Tell like what is the bottom line here? What do you like? I missed something.
Who are you asking?
So
Is it
I see a dichotomy between inclusivity and a multiplication of identities, which could end up being divisive all the way to the individual level. I think that's what Dolphin was saying.
is that what you're saying, Dolphin?
I'm saying like when we start with identity, then if that's the primary frame, it's all about separating and categorizing.
Mhm.
And then we lose the capacity to get to a ground floor where there's sameness and togetherness.
Yeah, I
So
don't think it is personally. I think it's about finding places where people belong so that they can relax and feel safe, and then connect.
I
Okay.
think that's the positive and altruistic application of that ideology, but I think
Mhm.
it often falls short of that in its application.
Oh, I mean, yeah, we're
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah.
So what I'm gonna just put my 2 cents in. It's kind of a both and.
Sorry.
I love paradox. I love paradox. Is that even concepts like man or woman can be used, um, I guess, coming from the heart and seeking to bridge understandings in differences. And and then sometimes I've heard and seen them use like, well, you're just a man, well, you're just a crazy woman. That they can be used to divide,
Mm.
or
Mhm.
they can be, I feel like more when it comes from curiosity and compassion, I
Yeah.
might say, I've had an experience of being a woman, and I actually realized I don't know that much about the experience or the traumas of being a man. Would you share them with me? So that they can bridge things. And and what I notice in, I would say more like in the Netherlands and Belgium, like I haven't been everywhere in Europe having this conversation, but in Belgium and the Netherlands, I people feel more relaxed about having an identity that they're exploring, but understanding that the world isn't necessarily caught up with that concept. So when I
Mm.
misgender people in Belgium or the Netherlands, they'll go, I'll be like, oh my God. Like I forgot that you're a she or a he or a they. And they'll be like, and they'll say, oh, it's okay.
Mhm.
They'll just say like, oh, that's okay. We all make mistakes, or that's okay. There's like this relaxed
It's
sense.
forgiving.
It's very forgiving. It's like that they're utilizing these terms as a personal exploration to discover
Mhm.
who they are, and they're
Yeah,
forgiving of a world that's not there yet. And then when
right.
I'm in like the Bay
Learning.
Area in particular, and I misgender someone, they'll like be like, like I've insulted them, that they're not
Mhm.
important to me, that I've denigrated them, like worse than not remembering their name, worse than not remembering their name, that I have dismissed what is core and essential about them in a way that assumes that I'm violent.
It feels inconsiderate.
Very inconsiderate. And so it's interesting to have similar conversations in sex positive communities, but
Mm.
experience it's, I just have to say the US, I can't say for Canada, the US is
Ah,
so freaking divisive
Hmm.
and
yeah.
like kind of emotionally violent and lacks, once again, curiosity, lacks the
Hmm.
capacity for like nuance and curiosity and forgiveness and um which is probably due to all of our attachment issues, which, if you
Hmm.
look back, is going to go all the way back to, but Canada's too. But I feel like a lot of it comes down to being a culture of um, people who've abandoned their culture and
Yeah.
who, it was a trauma to leave their country and never return.
Hmm.
So
Mm. So a
it's
loss of identity.
a loss of identity. So there's just layers of ow, like trauma
Yeah.
ow in the
Hmm.
US that I don't think you don't have that. You haven't lost your identity if your lineage has been in the same, land for
Hmm.
Yeah.
thousands and thousands of years.
Totally.
I mean, it feels like US and Canada. I think Canada is a little bit further along, but it feels ultimately that they're their colonizer cultures that are just finding, in the grander scale of things, just finding their feet. And it at some level it feels like a teenage culture or a young adult culture. It's like, this is who I am. And all the cultures of Europe are like, yeah, you'll change your mind in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that metaphor is helpful. Not maybe not the whole story, but a helpful reference point for sure.
And I just
But
want to
what I
I want to bring something in here for a second. Just a sec. Let me try to put words into it. I feel like at some point in some way, but let me think about this as someone from the USA. Um, that there's as we move along together, there's something important about being able to language at times the similarities and the differences between the United States and Canada. So that in some ways, the United States, we have this maverick mentality, this innovative mentality that our history in some way supported us to develop that, where we became leaders in tech and different things like that. And this is like kind of like this once again when we think of the the challenge and the grace in each person or each country. I think because you're both from Canada, that there's something beautiful at some point of saying that Canada has these graces and these challenges, and that that's part of the lens. We call it
Hmm.
social location. Is
Mhm.
I am teaching from the lens of
Hmm.
Mm.
my age, my Italian American family, identifying female, being 68 years on the planet. Like there's a lens here that has both its privileges and its
Trade-offs.
challenges that, I'm going to hold and sometimes might impact you in beautiful ways and sometimes in challenging ways. And I
Hmm.
think
Mhm.
there's something powerful about identifying that the two of you, even though you're in different parts of your own country, are also holding a different lens
Mhm.
than the United States lens.
Hmm. Yeah.
I wanted to add something. Thank you for that. Um, I wanted to. I like this better than intersectionality, although intersectionality is essentially, in my interpretation, is essentially kind of a similar. Like, these are the circumstances given to me because of blah blah. Versus, I look at things, and so there's like how things come at me because of what I look like, or what people interpret I am, versus how do I interpret the world based on who I am and my circumstances, and and also partially because the way the world interacts with me. So it's like the dance of it makes me look at the world a certain way, or makes the world look at me in a certain way. And actually, that brings me to identity. And I feel like the beauty of identity is when it originates from the self. And as a social location, nice, as a way of learning to belong. Like, oh, I belong to this group, belong to that group, belong to this group. Like, ultimately, we all belong to the whole world, and we all belong to the human race. But is it helpful in getting a sense of belonging? Usually we need smaller groups than that in
Yeah.
order to feel a sense of belonging. Hang on, hang on. Almost done. And I feel like when identity is put on us is when it's actually not inclusive. It's actually asking us to exclude parts of ourselves that maybe doesn't feel like it belongs. So
Mhm.
I feel like identity, the positive use of identity, is as a something that originates from inside out, as a way of finding belonging. And when it's put on us without consent, it actually serves to divide us, or actually removes part of us, or force us into a particular constraint that we didn't ask for the purpose of the group, which in and of itself doesn't have enough intelligence to better understand, at least not when society is young or culture is young. It doesn't understand as a group that it's doing something that's oppressive. And I think that's why Europe is actually doing a better job than the US, because it's been around for a few thousand years. Although Europe did do a fair bit of, what would you call it? Like slavery and other awful things that happened in the old days of Europe, that, it's sort of grown beyond. Um, but the
Depending on
US and what's that?
depending on the country. Keep going.
For sure, for sure. It's not a universal thing. But, I feel like being further along does offer greater wisdom, and also a kind of a greater sense of peace, which kind of allowed for the unification of Europe at some level. It's not perfect either.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm. Both and.
yeah, both
Both
end.
ends.
Yeah.
So I put in the social location document, and often when I'm teaching classes, I will start, like, when we do the introduction of self or whatever, or the introduction of the teachers, I'll often start with social location, which includes I will make mistakes. Like, my social
Yeah.
location has a bias. So I might not what I'm saying might not be relevant to your experience, or I might even
Mhm.
make a mistake. And so if that happens, your voice is welcome.
Mhm.
So
Spank me.
that I just wanted to put that there as, once again, a potential concept of if we want to bring that in the early days. Um,
Yeah.
and then the other thing that, Philippe, I wanted to highlight that you said, and by the way, there was a study done on like Italian speech patterns versus like other cultures, and Italians will start talking before the other person is done speaking,
Oh,
and
yeah.
they've actually done a study on this, and
A
so
lot.
it's a sign of in Italian culture, it's a sign of enthusiasm.
Oh,
It's like
totally. And yeah, I think Quebecois do it as well.
it's like I'm so into this conversation, but to certain other cultures, it's seen as very interruptive or
Totally.
almost dismissive, but it's a very
Totally.
different cultural context. So at any rate, that I wanted to highlight identity from the inside out.
Yeah.
Like, this is so huge. This is so huge. Like, it deserves to be highlighted in
Mhm.
our teaching in the secure network, in Coming Home to
Yeah.
Love.
You
Is
get
that
to decide.
this is a paradigm, a tectonic paradigm shift, where
Mhm.
until very recently, like just
Yeah.
20, 30 years ago, your identity was given to you by your
Yeah.
parents, by your
Yep.
religion, by your
Hmm.
culture. It was given to you. and you had to accept it to be, quote unquote, be successful in your culture. And in
Yep.
the last 30 years, so if you're feeling sort of like betwixt and between and sometimes confused, where do I stand today? It's because today we're actually opening the door to say your identity arises from your inside out. Who am I, male or am I female? Am I a bit of both? Am I, as the inner aspects, like which inner aspect am I going to say is a
Yeah.
primary leader of who I say I am? Am I spiritual or not spiritual? Like, what is my sexuality? It's not just male, female in missionary position for the purpose of procreation. So, who am I sexually? And for some of us, this is very exciting.
Mhm.
But for some of us, this is confusing. And for some of us, this is terrifying. And
Mm.
so to me, when we're seeing this right wing extremist fundamentalism, in some cases getting bigger, it's the people that are frightened by this whole concept of identity being an internal questioning, an internal inquiry versus what has been, which
Mhm.
is given. And so
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and I want to signal us to kind of get to
Yeah.
business,
We
but
can
like I just
wrap
want
it
to
up.
throw one more piece and we can keep mud wrestling for sure.
I
Um,
don't think that's wrestling. I think we're
no,
like,
well, just like that piece is like I think of progressivism and conservatism as like A-frames in a struct, like they need each other. Like progressivism without conservatism throws the baby out with the bathwater. And
Mhm.
conservatism without progressivism is just rigid and stagnant and doesn't
What's in the
address the
middle?
unfolding.
Because I don't feel like I belong to either one of them.
Well, I mean, libertarianism is usually referred to as this more middle place, but I think
No.
libertarianism is more like a kind of smattering of different elements across the spectrum. So
Mm.
I don't know, like center or whatever we want to call it, but for me, the rising of the conservative values and orientation is partly a reaction of their own insecurity, and partly
Yep.
there's something good in saying, wait a second, if the progressivism becomes the primary driver of how we move in the world, we're missing and losing something that actually has value. So again, that to me that brings the conversation together instead of just saying the right is wrong and the left is right, which is again to me is just a silly thing to think or say.
Well,
well,
that's the thing. I never. I mean, I've I've never been really into politics because of that. Like I'm more like, well, what's the better? What's a way that includes the two and it doesn't make one right or wrong. It's just like each of them doesn't seem to be having the best design. How do we create a design that allows for all of it to coexist?
Totally. Integration.
Yeah, yeah, but without fighting the other two, just.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
Collaborative.
the thing. I was never raised with any of it, so I think generally speaking, I was never told you need to be this way, but I also wasn't raised in context where that was actually present, and it was and we I was never told that I was a precious snowflake either.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
so it's really interesting
Yeah.
to have that or not have that. Kind of makes me kind of naive.
Yeah.
and I think that I'll try to find it for you. I watched something like yesterday with this very brilliant.
It's interesting, we start
Just a
talking here
second.
about digital
Let me stop
comms
this.
and that type.
Is I watched something. I was going to see if I could find it, but I don't think I can. Is this quick as quickly as I would like, where this uh he called himself an I think something like an academic elite or academically privileged elite, and he gave a speech on how how the academic elites have actually failed, modern society. And he was talking specifically referencing the USA, although he was speaking to an international audience. And it was this pathway towards more and more, I would say, sort of like a selfishness So the
Mm.
issue is not because he went back to history and what he means by being conservative, which was actually like a very, in the original foundation of what the conservative movement was. And so the values were, he said, in terms of politics, the issue is not whether someone identifies conservative or liberal. The issue is whether or not someone identifies as in service, like what they're doing is actually in service. And what we're seeing more and more, and I think the bottom line I got out of this, but he said it much more brilliantly, is more and more our governmental leaders are actually going into politics to serve themselves or to serve a small elite privileged group. And he talked about how the way he was specifically speaking to the US, but it could extrapolate to other cultures, is that the way that the academic institutions were created, that they have created a caste system.
Mm. Yep.
And I
More
don't
and
know.
more as time goes, for sure.
And so he was pointing to, once again, in the US, I don't know the statistics in Canada, he wasn't referring to them, is that, the people that go to a small number of elite institutions are the ones that actually have the most wealth, have the most governmental positions, and that this disparity, like you said, is growing between the haves and the have-nots, and that they're serving themselves.
Concentration of power.
Yeah, they're not actually serving the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was never part of the ethics of, it is somewhat, but only if people follow it. And that's where, to me, that's where ethics starts to come in. Like, what are the things that are required of the people with power, or even without? Like, what is the right way to do things? And I think you need to have a common set of values in order to do that. And I think the diversification of thought and morals makes it very difficult to have a common thread. So
I really want to say more.
Yeah.
And I think we should.
This was amazing. And guess what? It was recorded.
I know. I saw. I was like, yeah, good.
So
Good.
I'll extract. I'll extract it, and then we could just post it.
Sure. Yeah.
I'll find the beginning of the conversation. Without the more personal share. And I think it really started with Francesca, kind of going more into that topic. So I'll find the starting point and the ending point, and then extract that.
Cool.
Okay, business.
Yeah, you go ahead.
I just want to say, so Priya Tom's registered, Anna is registered. I have two more that potentially will. They're local, so they will do the non-residential. So I'm giving them a super discount for that. I don't have anybody else in the pipeline.
I have this woman, Tammy, here in Edmonton. She's still kind of thinking about it.
Okay.
Yeah, she seemed pretty clear she wanted to come, and with the payment plan, she seemed like on board. But yeah, I'll check in with her again this week, and then I have a call on Thursday, booking from the landing page.
Oh, sweet. Okay, so not somebody we know, or what's the name?
I don't. Hold on.
Because it could still be somebody we know.
Could be someone we know.
How about you, Francesca? Anybody?
Not off the top of my head, but I'll keep marinating. I think a lot of my people have registered, but okay, this is it. I think you'll find it fascinating. I thought he was very well spoken. How elite rigged society and why it's failing.
It's oligarchy. That's just the way it works. In a way, we do the same thing. Like we have people that we know assist, and we support each other. Like this all happens. This all happens already with us, but it at higher levels, it's just the same with more power behind it, more money, more power. Like people still give each other pats on the back and mutual support, and because they can feel that they can trust each other because they know each other because they're in the same circles. But when I'm like, yeah, I mean, we invite the people that we trust into our containers to help us with their containers. And I was even like, oh yeah, I was sleeping with one of the assistants because we're in a relationship, and Ista was doing similar things, but then it became part of the game rather than incidental to the game.
It's Gabriella Clementel.
Okay, no, I don't know.
Clementel.
Okay, beautiful. Sometimes there's people who come in from random directions, but this feels overall better than the ads, I have to say.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
our-
we were getting calls, but not bookings, and I think there's ways to go about it in the future, but right now it just doesn't feel like the way to go.
And how are we doing with financials with the people that
I mean,
are?
it's looking right now that you'll make some. I mean, it's the same as I said last time. You'll make about 2,500 to 3,000, and we'll both make. Oh, actually, that's a question. But yeah, I mean, I was interpreting we were going to do the same percentages because Dolphin is doing a lot of the marketing stuff. But I don't know how you feel with it, because you were doing more last time. It feels. Dolphin.
Last time, I mean, with the landing page and the
August.
website and everything, like
Oh, right. That's
it's been
right.
a lot
Thanks.
of
Yeah. No,
there's been
thanks
a
for
lot
the
of
reminder. Yeah.
and I
Sorry,
did the book retreats. Sarah came through the Booking Retreats website, and
Oh,
so
good.
like
Cool.
those pieces have been quite a bit of work in the background. But
Perfect.
yeah, I feel like
Perfect.
the arrangement that we made is true to what I've been showing up with, and again, this
Yeah.
it's always an ongoing conversation as a team.
Yeah. I totally forgot about the website. So
Yeah.
yes, totally great. I just needed that reminder. Okay, so and it looks like we're gonna make about 35, 37.
Yeah, and more registrations can come in. So this looks
Yeah.
like Leaf's partner. He's with like a
Oh.
young, kind of beautiful young
Oh.
brunette woman, right?
Okay, so Leaf and his partner were thinking of doing it. So maybe it is her, and
Yeah.
she just wants to have a chat. Okay,
Yeah, I think I
beautiful.
remembered him with her when we ran into him at the at Harbin.
Oh, I do not remember that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, amazing. Oh, wow. What a fucking small world. Amazing. Okay, cool. Yeah, my memory is not doing so
Yeah,
great
it does
on
that
such
Leaf
things.
Hansen and Gabriella. I'm just looking at it now.
Okay, so then, yeah, those are our two people. And you said
Yeah, like
young,
if
you mean like 20s, 30s, or?
I don't know. She looks like she's in her 20s. She looks like she's
Okay.
maybe 20. She could be, I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
Between 25
Yeah.
and 30, I would guess, but
Yeah. The reason I was asking is because you were just posting. You had just posted about the younger people.
the youth,
this
yeah,
one.
the youth rate.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's all I got business wise. I feel like the group is moving along. People are booking their tickets. No big questions have been posted. Yeah. I mean, it feels like a more self-responsible group than the Liberation group, which I think Stacy treats a little bit more like children because that's the direction that they're going. And here we have like a group of people who are like, yeah, I'm going to rent a car. Who wants to ride? Like there's a lot more collaboration, it feels.
Yeah.
And it feels easier, in terms of the job of organizing.
Yeah. Cool. The other thing on my agenda radar is the workbook. And so feels like the curriculum is there. Maybe we walk through it real quick today. And then any massaging or fine tuning that you want to do to the document that you sent me around, like these are the things I want included based on the workshops I'm doing in the curriculum. That'll then allow me to kind of walk through and do it. And then the other thing is just to have a look at the example images that Francesca gave from the Liberation workbook, and then look at the design of our workbook. I prefer ours. It has images. It feels a little bit more premium, but again, like we can have a discussion, like that would be my orientation, but we can have a discussion of like paring it down and making it much more bare bones and have